Hi friends, hope you are doing well. I am Dr. Ganguly. Welcome to my channel. So today I am going to talk about the difference in the education systems in India and US, and specifically I am going to address the problem regarding coursework. Now essentially many of you may know that as far as foreign students are concerned, Indian students are now the largest group in the US. So they have exceeded the number of Chinese students who are coming to US, and India is now number one as far as the student population is concerned. And as more and more students come to the US, what's happening is that many of them are encountering difficulties in terms of their education. So I'm going to touch upon some issues about differences between the Indian and the American education system, and how the students who are coming from India can cope with the differences in the system. So let's start with the first issue, and that is final exams. Now, as far as the Indian education is concerned, the stress is on the final exam, and sometimes little bit of stress is given to the midterm also. But in most cases, the final exams are extremely important. So what happens is that most of the time the students spend that time in loitering around the campus, in spending time in cafeterias and so on. And just near the finals, they study very hard. They do a lot of all-nighters and so on, and they are able to do well in the exam. So this essentially becomes an algorithm for many Indian students who are doing their bachelor's or master's degree program. And what happens is that when you come to US, the final exam grade is very less. Sometimes there is no final exam at all. Most of the grades is given in terms of homeworks, quizzes, midterms, and projects. And sometimes even the fact that you have come to the class or attendance is also given grade. It's all depending on the professor concerned. So keep this in mind. Do not procrastinate till the end. So that's an algorithm you need to get out of. The number two issue is homeworks. So in the US system, as soon as you start taking a class, the professor gives you a homework. In fact, when I was out here for sabbatical for one of the universities, a student complained to me that I did not give homeworks every week. I gave every 2 weeks. So essentially the expectation is that every week you give a homework, and the students spend a lot of time doing this homework. They do it by themselves. They do not do it with their friends. They try not to copy and so on. And so what happens is that the homeworks are the main mechanism through which they study in the US. In contrast, in India, people may tell you to do some homework assignments or do some problems, but it is very rare. It's only in certain colleges. And even if homeworks are given, there are a few of them. It's generally not the case that homeworks are given every week. So this is something you need to keep in mind. Now, one more aspect about the homework is that in the US system, if you did all the homework problems diligently and by yourself and without seeking help from some online resources or ChatGPT, then what will happen is that you will find the final exams to be pretty easy, because generally the final exams and the midterms and even some quizzes are derivatives of the homework which are given to you. So keep that in mind. Now, the number three thing is projects, and projects are given as individual projects and often as group projects. So essentially you may have a group of 4 to 5 people who have to do this project. Now this project may involve doing a lot of programming, then writing a report, sometime even making a presentation, or a combination of all these factors. So essentially what happens is that here sometimes you may have to work on your own, but toward the senior classes and the master's level, you may actually work with several people. And essentially these projects are preparing you for the corporate lifestyle, because in a company typically you work with a group. There are no lone ranger people in the company. They're all team people. So essentially this project mindset is very different. It requires that you work all the time. You should not be the slacker in the project group, because that could be reported to the professor. Your group is going to be very dependent on you, because they are going to split the problem into several parts, and you are going to get an important part of this problem. So keep this in mind. Finally, there are quizzes, and quizzes are very common in US universities. So essentially most of the time you know when the quiz is taking place. However, somewhat draconian professors may actually give you a surprise quiz. So this can also take place. Now interestingly, the quizzes are just 1 or 2 questions or problems, and they are given from the preceding part of the subject. they make sure that you study the content every now and then. So unlike in Indian universities where you study the entire syllabus near the end and give it in the final exam, here they let you get tested on each sub part, and so therefore you do not need to essentially remember all that material. You need to only remember snippets of the material, give the quiz as well, and then finally in the final exam, if there is a final exam, you collate all these things together and give the final. Now, like I mentioned before, if you were to do all the homework assignments properly, you were to do all the quizzes properly, then you are generally likely to do well in the final exam. Now, the next point is extra credits. So sometime in US universities you are given extra credits for certain things. So there may be a quiz which is beyond the regular requirement. So essentially what this means is that if all your exams, quizzes, homeworks are totaling to 100%, this is an extra 10%. So you may get an extra credit quiz, you may get an extra credit term paper, research project, and so on. If you are falling behind in your grade, sometime you can request the professor to give you something to make up for it. So in fact, the professor may actually set a separate quiz for this extra credit, and then people who are actually doing well in all the previous quizzes and homeworks may not need to take this quiz, but if you want to take it, you can take it. So these things are always possible. Remember, the grading system is internal. The professors have a lot of leeway in terms of selecting the way they give their grades and so on. Now the next issue is term papers. So this is one more favorite of many professors in the US system, is that they are going to tell you to write a paper on a certain topic. Maybe they give you the topic, maybe you choose this topic, and so on. So again, this is preparing you for some of the things you may need to do in industry, but more likely some of the things you need to do in graduate school. So essentially, as you know, graduate school doing masters and PhDs involves a lot of writing. So you need to write a thesis, you need to write a dissertation, you need to write conference and journal papers. So essentially, a term paper simply forces you to do a literature survey, figure out what's been going on in the field, and write it up in your own words. So again, do not take the help of too many tools here. Remember that plagiarism is a very important issue. Many of these term papers are going to be checked through plagiarism software such as Turnitin. So make sure that you do not plagiarize content, because the ramifications of plagiarisms are very harsh in most universities. Finally, there are issues of group presentation. So in some classes, the entire class or a large group in the class may be asked to do a presentation, and this presentation again is preparing you for the corporate world, for graduate school, because in those settings you are not only going to do the work but actually make presentations about your work. So again, these are some important things. You need to improve your presentation skills, need to get familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint, need to know how to make good slides, and then need to present them. So this skill is very important. How you speak is very important. How you conduct yourself is very important. And so you are going to learn all these things in the US university. Now, many of these things can be actually inculcated in the Indian education systems, and many forward-looking universities are actually inculcating these things, because you don't want to give all your credit on the final exam. You want to give a lot of credit for homework assignments, quizzes, surprise quizzes, and especially projects, term papers, and presentations, because as far as the knowledge which is desired by the industry and also for research is concerned, it's more of this project type of thinking, it's more of this term paper type of thinking. So I would say that projects and papers are an important component of the education system which need to be given more importance. So now if you are an Indian student planning to come to US, you know some of the things which are going to be there for you. So make sure you do not procrastinate. You start studying from day one of your classes, and you start doing all the homework assignments diligently and meticulously. Non-submission of homeworks, not doing quizzes, not attending classes is not an option, because the final exam will not be there to save you if you do not do all these things. So that was my take for today. I hope this video is useful not only to students but also their parents. Many parents are spending a lot of money to send their kids to US, and they should keep in mind that this is a difficult process. The transition is not simple. There is a mental transition involved, there is a cultural transition involved, and many of these things are quite difficult in today's generation, because students have a lot of resources such as phones, such as YouTube and so many other things in which they can spend that time. So that was my video for today. I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.